I'll go back to the Metrodome. Minnesota coming to bat here in the bottom of the first inning. Yankees didn't score in the top half the first. Mike Buddie gets his second major league start for the Yankees. His record, all of it out of the bullpen, as Otis Nixon.
Welcome back to State of the Frogs. I'm your host, J.W. Wilson. Today we have a special guest. Our brand new athletic director, Mr. Mike Buddie, is in the house today. Mike, thank you for joining us.
I'm pumped to be here, and I'm really not brand new anymore. I'm almost 6 months into it.
Surely.
But this is great. Appreciate you having me.
And a lot's happened in the first 6 months, so we'll dig into that here in a second. But yes, you are not new anymore for sure, but you definitely got a lot done in the first 6 months. So let's jump right into it. So you were named TCU Athletic Director January 1st of this year, 6 months ago roughly. How's it been going for you, generally?
It's been awesome. Let me open with that. It's been truly awesome. It's a lot. Mm-hmm. When you're the new flavor of the month and you've got a chancellor like Chancellor Buschini at the time, who was, on his sunset tour, awesome opportunities to make a lot of visits, put a lot of miles on my frequent flyer cards, and then transition it in with Chancellor Pullen, also kind of, doing a lot of these riff-ram road shows and getting out there to see frogs all over the country. It's been great. You couple that with trying to get your family settled and spend as much time with our coaches and student athletes as possible. So it's a lot, but it has been a wonderful, welcoming whirlwind.
Wonderful. And we're going to talk about this a little later, but possible to compare the two chancellors? I know Pullen's brand new as well, but is it possible to compare or contrast the two men?
Well, Chancellor Pullen has much better hair, for sure. They're very unique, and they complement each other extremely well. And what I love is that Chancellor Buschini had this long-term plan, and the full year of transition was just so well thought out and intentional. He's put Daniel in a great position to be successful. And Chancellor Pullen, with his business background, Harvard business educated, going into where college athletics is going into right now, to have someone at the helm who's that business savvy, who understands the inner workings of how to make business verticals work, is a much better position to be in for a college athletics department right now. Very nice.
Well, let's back up real quick before we get into the meat of the interview. You're born in Berea, Ohio. Where the heck is Berea, Ohio, and tell me what's going on there that led to your arrival in this world?
Well, Berea, Ohio, is a suburb of Cleveland. It's where the Cleveland Browns 2025 Super Bowl champs, Cleveland Browns, have their training site. Small town just south of Cleveland. Grew up the youngest of three boys. Got my brains beat in by my two older brothers constantly, which made me pretty competitive and started me on this world of this intersection of athletics and education. Both my parents were educators, high school math teacher, high school English teacher, and so always had a book in our hand, or we're in our basement where we had a wrestling mat. So that built the competitive spirit that led to my baseball career, and then certainly now in athletics administration. Long and winding road. Who knows how I got from there to here? There was quite a few stops in between.
Well, brothers, were they baseballers as well?
Both brothers were highly ranked wrestlers, as was I, believe it or not. Oldest brother went to Duke on an academic scholarship. Middle brother went to Stanford on a wrestling scholarship. Okay. Both played baseball through high school, but then had to give it up. And I watched, my brother who wrestled, I used to watch him come home at Thanksgiving and watch us eat, but he wasn't allowed to eat. So I knew that was not the route that I wanted to go.
Right. When did you know that baseball was something you were really good at? When did that thought occur to you?
Oh, geez. People who know me will laugh when I say this, but I'm fairly humble when it comes to it, or I just don't notice things very well. I think my friends at home would say when I was 10, they thought I was a great baseball player, but for me, it was really, 15, 16, because that was when my brothers aged out. And it was the first time that I started playing against kids my own age, because I played up with my brothers 2 years ahead of me. Right. My parents will take you to 14-year-old baseball practice. You're all going to play on the same team. And of course, I was 11 or 12. So I was comparing myself to some older kids. But yeah, I guess the light bulb went off probably freshman year of high school.
Very good. And I assume you did really well in high school because you were recruited and you ended up going to Wake Forest. Were you heavily recruited as a pitcher?
I was not. This is before internet and before showcases, and you're a kid who's average in Berea, Ohio, which, by the way, is the home to Baldwin Wallace College, which is where Rusty and Molly Reed's daughter went to college,
Okay.
which helped me in the interview, I think. But no, I had to try to recruit myself, and you did it by telephone and writing letters, and it was getting down to the wire, and the only real offers I had, or the interest I had, was Kent State and Bowling Green. And when you have a brother at Duke and a brother at Stanford, like Bowling Green and Kent State, no offense, which ironically that's where my parents went. I was lucky to get a late offer from Wake Forest, and my brother in Durham knew Winston-Salem in the area and thought it would be a great fit. And so I essentially went to Wake Forest and committed there sight unseen. Worked out well for both of us.
Very nice. So your career at Wake Forest, I know it ended well for you, but tell us a little about Wake Forest and how that was for you.
It was a stretch, going from Cleveland, Ohio, and moving to Tobacco Road, where they drink sweet tea, and I was calling it pop, and they called it soda. And I remember my freshman year, all of my roommates and teammates were from New York and Connecticut, and that kind of made it a little bit easier. But it wasn't until probably midway through my sophomore year that I found myself really enjoying it. I loved the institution, but I was a little bit uncomfortable, which was good, right? That's where most growth happens, and turns out being uncomfortable was great. And then my first day of my junior year is when my now wife showed up as a freshman, and that certainly helped things as well.
How did you guys meet?
We met on the quad.
Okay.
The old proverbial, the junior baseball player, the freshman girl walking up, and the old, hey, who is that? And then we ended up having a class together too. Ironically, the class name was Social Problems.
Okay.
We took that together. I was her tutor. I got her through it.
Very nice. Very nice. So as a pitcher for Wake Forest, what are your what type of pitches are we throwing? What was your strong suit?
Well, I had pretty good velocity, which ironically in 1990, 91, I was throwing 92, 93 miles an hour, which every high school in Texas has two kids that throw 92, 93 now, but that wasn't the case back then. Had a really good fastball and learned a really good slider midway through my freshman year, and just kind of took off from there.
Very nice. Okay, so you get to your senior year. I assume the team was doing well with you on the team?
We were middle of the pack.
Okay.
Now this is the ACC in 1990, 8 teams.
Right.
And it was, Georgia Tech, Clemson, North Carolina were 3 really good teams. Virginia, Duke, and Maryland were 3 really bad teams. And then NC State, Wake Forest were kind of right in the middle. And so we were a middling team. And I didn't make it to my senior year. I turned pro after my junior year.
You drafted 4th round by the Yankees. That had to be an amazing feeling. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, it was an amazing feeling. I mean, it was a culmination. 6 years old, I remember, I was telling my parents, hey, I'm going to be a Major League Baseball player, so, school can kind of be on the back burner, which they humored me and said, hey, maybe just in case, right? You should still keep going to school. I got the call late at night on draft day, and, you get a call from the New York Yankees saying, hey, welcome to the Yankee family, and we're excited. We got a scout who's going to fly in there tomorrow, and can't wait to meet you, and we can't wait to get you down here into a mini camp, and let's get your career started. And I hung up the phone, and again, this is a Cleveland suburb, and my mom and dad are, this is the phone on the wall, like we used to be.
Yes.
And I hung up the phone, and my parents said, well, who was it? And I said, what's the one team you don't want me to say? And they said, the Yankees.
Oh, wow.
And then they said, well, what round? I said, I have no idea. I didn't ask. But that was the beginning of my minor league career. And, I tell people the first player that the Yankees took that year was Derek Jeter. The second player they took was me. One of the scouts got promoted, one got fired. I never say which was which.
Fair. So your path went through the minors for a number of years?
Quite a long time. Yeah.
How did this, so can you talk about that? How many years in the minors, and then the call up to the bigs? How did that go?
Yeah, I mean, that's a call of a lifetime. I signed in 92. I went to Oneonta, New York. 1993, I was in Greensboro, North Carolina. 94, I was in Tampa, Florida. 95 and 96, Norwich, Connecticut, AA. 1997, AAA. 1998, I was the last player cut at spring training. I had a really good camp. I had been converted from a starting pitcher to a reliever in 1997. And then 98, I went to the West Coast with the big league team, knowing that they were going to send me back to the minor league camp, but just in case somebody got hurt. So I flew from Tampa to California for an exhibition game. The team started the season in Anaheim. I went back to Tampa to finish AAA's minor league spring training. And I was driving with my wife from Tampa to Columbus, Ohio, but we stopped in Winston-Salem to break up the trip. And I woke up the next morning to a knock on the door from my father-in-law saying, hey, somebody's calling for you. And it was Brian Cashman, the general manager, saying, Mariano Rivera tweaked his hamstring and we need you in Seattle by game time tonight. And
Gosh.
Talk about a snap moment.
Yes, sir.
We flew into overdrive, and I ended up getting to Seattle that night in about the 4th inning, and I was on the mound in the 8th.
Oh, wow. And that feeling must have been incredible, yes, being there that evening.
Yeah, I mean, it's a culmination of a lot of people and a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of struggle to get that opportunity and to face Edgar Martinez in my very first batter I faced, who was at the top of his game at that point.
How did you do in that situation?
I threw 3 pitches down the middle and 1 in the dirt, and they were all called balls.
Oh, so you walked him.
I was tested early by the American League umpire crew,
Very nice.
as was normal back in the day.
So anybody that knows anything about baseball, and even those who don't know much about baseball at all, know the 98 Yankees team won the World Series, and the bullpen they had was considered one of the greatest bullpens maybe in the history of the game. People like Mariano Rivera, David Wells, I had to write them down. There's some Andy Pettit, David Cohn. These are some of the great all-time greats. There's more that I'm not even mentioning, but that bullpen was legendary, aside from the Derek Jeter that you mentioned earlier. But being around those guys must have been something special. Are you able to take it all in and be humbled by this, or is it just part of the situation?
Well, I look back on it a lot more fondly now. In the moment, you're just really trying not to screw anything up. You're trying to earn your keep, and you do get an inferiority complex when half the team has been in all-star games, and you get spoiled. Like you mentioned the bullpen. I think the bullpen's ERA was like 2.6. My ERA was 4.5, which in a normal standard isn't embarrassing, but it was like double everybody else's, and you start to feel like, oh, I'm clearly the weak link here. But yeah, it was a special team, and it was a true team because there was nobody in the top 10 in the league in RBIs, nobody in the top 10 in batting average, nobody in the top 10 in home runs, nobody in the top 10 in ERA. It was just like everybody was really, really good, and nobody had to be great. And I think that kind of helped lend itself to winning 125 games.
You finished with a 4-run record even as a middle reliever, I think you said. You had a 5.6 overall ERA, which, all things considered, is still pretty solid.
Steroid era, JW. That was a steroid era.
I wasn't going to bring it up, but
the equivalent to like a 3.5 ERA these days.
Fair. So that team, like I said, went on to win the World Series. Please explain or describe what it's like, what that would be like to win the World Series with the Yankees.
Well, I tell people I was on a World Series championship team. I was not in San Diego when they won it. I was an alternate on the postseason, and so they sent me to Tampa, where their spring training was, to pitch to hitters while the postseason started. In case somebody tweaked a hamstring or had shoulder tightness, they would take them off the roster and add me. So I was in Tampa, pitching to hitters, staying in shape as they were pretty much just mowing everybody down in the postseason. So I didn't get a chance to be there. Ironically, the one good part was while I was in Tampa as an alternate for the postseason, my roommate had to pull out of a potential movie role that he was scheduled to be in, and it fell on my lap. So I ended up not getting to be in San Diego to celebrate a World Series, but I did get cast in a major motion picture.
For the love of the game.
Talk about a segue for you, buddy.
Yeah, there you go. Nailed it. So you are the pitching coach for Kevin Costner in For the Love of the Game. Holy cow, yes.
Well, this is Bull Durham, Field of Dreams Kevin Costner. This isn't John Dutton Kevin Costner. So my wife was really excited to get the chance to meet him.
Of course.
And you know what? It was a great experience. And I tell people, in this world of NIL, when we're paying our student athletes $1 million. You know, some of these young men and women are going to be making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a month. And I tell them, hey, this isn't reality. Like, this may be the most money you make in a long time. That was me in 1998, right? I was a rookie on the Yankees. I started actually making some money. And then my off-season job had always been tending bar or, you know, working in a warehouse. Well, this off-season, it was working with Kevin Costner and, you know, Kelly Preston. And I'm like, this isn't normal. This is not sustainable, but really fun to get to do it. We stayed at the Waldorf Astoria on the east side for about 7 weeks during filming. And I actually was the starting pitcher for the New York Yankees. So I took the loss in that game too. So very true to life. But then worked with Kevin a little bit behind the scenes. But to be honest with you, he knew how to pitch, and his mechanics were good. And he was a much better athlete than most people probably realized, and it was just a lot of fun.
Nice guy to be around as well.
Yeah, treated us very well. Was asked a lot of great questions. Was just, you know, very curious about pitching at the major league level and what it would be like, and asked a lot of great questions because he wanted the movie to be as authentic as possible.
And you had a speaking role. Jack Spellman was your character.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, the speaking role was left on the cutting room floor,
Okay.
which was just unfortunate because we were told that if you got a speaking role, you went to like the next level on the Screen Actors Guild pay scale,
Right.
which I could have used at the time. But yeah, it was a blessing and a curse. It was on the cutting room floor. It was a lot of F-bombs because they wanted it to be realistic, me getting taken out of the game. So maybe for my kids' sake, it's better that
Fair enough.
they didn't make the cut.
Did your World Series ring, it arrived at some point, right?
Oh yeah.
Very good. Very good. I'm sorry you didn't wear it today, but understood. We'll check that out later, I guess. From there, Yankees, then you went on to the Brewers, where you finished your career. Anything noteworthy for the Brewers you can share?
Well, it was some cool stuff about the Brewers was I got to play in the last game at County Stadium before they knocked it over, and I got to play in the first game in Miller Park, which was the new stadium, and that was great. And I will say, you know, when I was with the Yankees, I tell people I was the 10 guy. If we were up by 10 runs, I got to pitch, or down by 10 runs, I got to pitch, or if it was the 10th inning and there was no other options, I got to pitch. So going to Milwaukee, the team was not nearly as good, but I got to pitch in some meaningful games, you know, 3-2 in the 7th inning, and professionally that was pretty fun.
Very nice. Was it tough to walk away from the game at that point in 2002-ish, right?
2003, I got hurt, had Tommy John surgery.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, when you get hurt and you don't know the last game was the last game until it's already happened. And for me, that was probably better that way. And I had the surgery and I did the rehab, and I was thinking about coming back. I was pitching pretty well again, but I didn't want to miss any more Christmases, and I didn't want to miss any more of our kids were 4 and 1 at that point. I still had a semester of college that I needed to finish, and that was in the back of my mind, and I was ready to move on. So I was at peace with it.
Very nice. Your next step in your life, you were back at Wake Forest and the admin side of things, from lots of different roles I read about, and it ultimately led you to the position you hold now at TCU, but in another capacity. So from Wake Forest, you went from all these things, became the Furman AD in 2015. Anything Furman-wise that we can share?
Well, it was the first opportunity to learn on the job, right? It's like going to Oneonta. You have to make that first step to get to where you want to go, and Furman was that step. The great part, honestly, was I bought a bunch of really sharp purple ties that are coming in handy all over again. But no, Greenville, South Carolina was a great step. And again, we're in the shadow of Clemson. And so I made some really good decisions, some really good hires, and probably some bad decisions. And very few people cared or knew about it.
And then Furman led you to your prior role at Army AD, which is obviously a substantial place to be in the world. I think you were credited with raising a whole bunch of money for the renovation of Mitchie Stadium, which I've been to. Other things, the improvements to the facilities, the teams, some of the NCAA opportunities that became available because of some of the work you did at Army. What was the Army experience like for you in short?
Well, 5+ years at West Point, like you learn a lot through osmosis. Some of our nation's best and brightest thinkers and some of our best and brightest young men and women, like just being around the energy at a place like West Point gives you a whole new perspective. And, I think all of us need a dose of perspective from time to time. And so you go from a place like Furman to a place like West Point, you just fall in love with the work, the ethos of the institution. the men and women who I lived with and worked with, who had devoted 30 years of their lives to serving our country. It's admirable, and you hope some of it rubs off on you. It was a great place for our kids to finish, high school and college, and it was a great 5 years. We got a lot done as a group. I had a great team, but I was ready for the next step.
Right. The easy question is the men and women you deal with at the West Point versus the men and women you deal with at Furman or TCU, for that matter. I wouldn't say they're substantially different, but there is a different caliber of human being, and obviously what all goes into being at the West Point is quite a step up from what normal kids do around here at TCU. Any perspective on that?
Well, they're different, certainly different. The kids at West Point raise their hand and choose something really difficult, and the kids that choose TCU are choosing something difficult. And so the recruiting pitches aren't as dissimilar as you might think. We're looking for young people with a chip on their shoulder, who feel like they could be at the SEC or the Big Ten level, and maybe they didn't get those offers. And then we want kids who are just hell-bent on representing the Horned Frogs, and you want kids who are hell-bent on being in the United States Army. And so a lot of similarities and a lot of similarities in hard work, and facilities do matter at West Point. And so it's not that unlike a normal college athletic department.
Are you dealing with a lot of government officials, generals, military personnel as well, on a regular basis?
Oh yeah, weekly. And the superintendent of West Point is a 3-star general, and so everything that we do, whether it's training on the wrestling team, the football team, the basketball team, there's a component to teaching leadership, character development, and contributing to their preparation to lead troops into battle. And so that's unique really to the 3 academies here in the United States. But the way that you approach it, and the organization and prioritization are the same thing that the athletes at TCU are doing.
When you were at AD at Army, did you have any knowledge more than the general knowledge of TCU and what TCU was or who they were? Does that ever cross your plate?
Well, yeah, in several areas, right? I served on the NCAA baseball committee multiple times at Wake Forest, and then again at Furman, and then again at Army, and hopefully again here once at TCU. So baseball reputation, I knew Coach Schlossnagle very well just from interacting with him. Got to watch the TCU College World Series teams multiple times, and just how they played, and the unique brand of TCU and the Horned Frogs. And then 2021, we got the chance to come to the Armed Forces Bowl with the Army football team. We beat Missouri on a last-second field goal, and anytime an academy beats an SEC school, that's memorable. But the way that we did it, and to get to spend 4 days in the heart of downtown Fort Worth, leaves an impression on you. And I remember my wife and I, we had our daughter with us who was in 11th grade at the time, and we were pushing her to hey, this is pretty great campus, isn't it? She ultimately didn't choose to come to TCU, but I remember my wife saying, that was pretty awesome. And I said, well, Jeremiah Donati's a great AD, and he's a lot younger than me, and he's probably never leaving. And so we were a little bit caught off guard when the job came open, but really thrilled that it did.
Very nice. Take a quick break. We'll be right back with AD Mike Buddie on State of the Frogs.
Energy does everything for us. It's all-encompassing.
We're all benefiting and affected from it.
And it is something that we all need to know about.
It is the glue that holds everything together.
TCU is powering what matters, our future.
We don't just talk about what's needed, we focus on results.
The Ralph Lowe Energy Institute is creating a world where energy is affordable, sustainable, and reliable.
Great leaders innovate regardless of what the world gives them, or in ways that they see the world needs to change. And Mike Buddie is that exceptionally gifted leader. And today, he is the leader of TCU Athletics. He will elevate our programs and lead us all into the future. And today, he's a Horned Frog. Please join me in welcoming Texas Christian University's new Director of Intercollegiate Athletics, Mike Buddie.
Welcome back to State of the Frogs with TCU Athletic Director Mike Buddie. Mike, so you're at Army, you get a phone call from a search committee, I believe, asking you if you're interested in this job, and how did that go down for you?
Well, I remember saying, hell yes, I am interested in this job. It was an interesting time because, one of the things that I had helped lead at Army was leaving independence behind and joining the American Athletic Conference. And I thought we were well positioned, but at the time I think we were 7-0 in the league with a chance to play for a championship. And if you win one of the Group of 5 leagues, you have a chance to play in the college football playoff. And so we were watching Boise State and their efforts through the Mountain West, hoping that they might stumble because they were ahead of us in the rankings. So I had, as my focus should have been, it was clearly focused on how do we get Army into the college football playoff. But then you get this call, and TCU, they wanted to fill this position. And so it was late November when I got the call, and I said, I'd love to be involved. And behind the scenes, meanwhile, I'm talking to the chairman of the board at Army saying, hey, I'm having a conversation with TCU, which those are tough conversations to have with people who really rolled up their sleeves and helped build all of this and have the success that we were having. But had a great first initial call with the chancellors and the search committee, and was invited to interview in person on December 23rd.
Okay.
And we had just lost to Navy. And so, your spirits are down because that is a big rivalry. So getting that call and finding out that they wanted to have a further conversation in person was great. They flew out to New York, which made it easy for me. I jumped on a train and had a conversation and was back by lunch. But doing a Zoom interview, I think they're worthless and I hate doing them. But getting in the room and spending a few hours with people who bleed purple, it took it from I'm interested in this job to how in the world do I get this job? I've got to convince them that I'm the right guy. And then it really took off quickly right after the holidays.
Very nice. Before we keep going, I failed to ask you about the Army-Navy. For those who aren't familiar with the most storied rivalry in college sports, football specifically, what does Army-Navy mean to you as where you've been, what you've seen?
Well, it's a great rivalry because the young men on both teams are the same. They're high caliber kids. Most of them are recruited by both academy, and they choose one or the other. But there's a million men and women who serve in the Army who claim that game as their own. It's just there's nothing like it. There's a blessing that Father Matt Polakowski said about a decade ago, where he said it's the only sporting event in the country where the young men on the field are willing to die for everyone watching it, and that really puts it into perspective.
It's incredible. So, okay, so you accept the TCU job, and or about around Christmas time, you and the wife and the kids decide this is what we're going to do. When did you say yes officially?
I got called on December 28th by both chancellors on speakerphone, and had a quick conversation. We had just gotten from Shreveport, where we had played in a bowl game, and my family, we went to Florida to get away and relax for a few days. And the relaxation probably took a backseat to excitement. So accepted on the 28th, and then, contracts and term sheets and all of that. And I remember Pete Thamel, who's a great reporter at ESPN, called me on New Year's Eve and said, hey, if there's anybody at West Point that you haven't told, you need to tell them, because I know it's you, and I'm running with it in 10 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So New Year's Eve changed, and officially, was on the payroll the next day.
Yes, sir.
1/1/25.
Your first impressions of Fort Worth coming from New York?
Well, I would love to tell you that the weather was nice, but I left New York, it was 26, and I think it was 25 here. But highly unusual. And you know what, again, every time I walk into Carter Stadium, I'm blown away. It feels like I'm in a museum of some sorts, and it's the cleanest, crispest facility that is in Division I athletics, and I'm convinced of it. So, getting back, coming here for the bowl game, you're just like, yeah, it's the bowl game, it's great. The stockyards are fun, I love cowboy boots, it's cool, but to come here the first time and realize I'm a resident of Texas. I got to find a place to live, and the only option is this rundown old house out there in Montserrat. Inside joke. It was really kind of awesome. And the other thing is the welcoming community that Fort Worth is. I'm hobnobbing and having to meet everybody and shaking hands, and I see my kids in the back corner having conversations with 7, 8, 9 staff members, coaches, trustees, just all rolling up their sleeves and making us feel welcome.
Yes, indeed. You mentioned your predecessor Jeremiah Donati a second ago. Did you have any communication with him prior to accepting the job or thereafter?
Certainly thereafter, not prior to accepting it. I had spoken to Chris Delcani, who I've known for a long time. Got some pointers from Coach Schlossnagel as well, just to kind of learn as much as I could about the ethos of this institution. Jeremiah, I knew, was busy with his own fire hose in Columbia, South Carolina, but to his credit, I've probably called him 15 times since I took this job, and he's answered all 15 times and truly still loves TCU, cares about it, and wants us to be successful. And as he should. His fingerprints are all over this, and he doesn't want me to screw it up, and
Right.
I hope I don't.
Right. You mentioned prior to this, you've been bringing from a fire hose ever since you got here. I assume that hasn't slowed down that much, but were you able to even get your feet on the ground in Fort Worth, or were you traveling off and gone once you arrived? Any chance to explore the city?
Yeah, not right away. It was unpack your bag. I lived in the Chancellor's guest house, and we were on the road quite a bit. And the great part about working at Army is they provide housing for you. But the downside of that is when you break up with them, you have 30 days to get out of your house. So as you know, we were in a hurry to find a place to live, and we were fortunate that worked out. But my wife and I were halfway through our boxes, and now it's March, and we looked at each other and said, all the things that we loved about Fort Worth, Sundance Square and being downtown and the stockyards, we haven't even done yet. And so we kind of, dropped everything and said, next weekend we are not unpacking a box. We are going to go do those things. And so it was great, and I'm glad we did. It was a beautiful weekend, and it rekindled the excitement that we had.
Sure. First restaurant you family got to visit without anybody else. Just is there a restaurant that you found yourself at?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We, the day of my press conference, the chancellor kind of said, "Hey, go do your family thing." My wife Tracy and I were still kind of doing photos, and so we told our kids, pick the place, and they're good with the iPhones, and so we finished out, and I loosened my tie. I said, "Where are we going?" And they said, "Rodeo Goat." And I said, "Okay." And it was a burger and beer place and down in the cultural district, and it was perfect because a burger and a beer was exactly what I needed at the time.
Very nice. Do you own a pair of cowboy boots or a cowboy hat? Is that something you had to purchase, or did you already have these things?
I did not have them. I still do not have a cowboy hat. The folks at Justin Boots, John Sweeney was kind enough to ask me what my shoe size was, and we went over to the factory and got measured, and turns out one of my feet is a little bit bigger than the other. And so, yeah, I'm the proud owner of some black lizard skin Justin boots.
Very nice, very nice. All right, Mr. Buddie, the state of the Frogs we're in today. You've been 6 months on the job. You've seen a lot. You've had some successes in several sports. Let's get into this. Let's get into this and figure out where we sit in the world. What do you think about our athletic program generally when you got here, and where do you want this thing to go?
Well, when I got here, I thought it was in really good shape. Our stable of head coaches are as good as of human beings as I've been around, and I'm coming from West Point, where there's some pretty great human beings. The level of care and concern that they have for the young people that they recruit, I love, because college athletics can and has become transactional. But I just think we have a great balance of still recruiting some high school kids who bet on themselves and develop in physically and mentally and emotionally, and our coaches are great at developing talent. But then we also take advantage of the current system, which allows us to take some transfers. And so Coach Dykes has a great ratio between high school kids and transfers that I think is the perfect way to build and still have some cohesion and chemistry, and still allows our fans to get to know these young people over time. Then you've got Mark Campbell, who's clearly just a whiz in the transfer portal. But he's also got, Donovan Hunter and a few others that are going to be here for 2, 3, 4 years. And so we're in a really good position. to get a chance to win a national championship in my second month with our beach volleyball team. Coach Gutierrez was just a phenomenal success story. Coach Roditi, was a couple points away from going back to back on the men's tennis side. But as I look to the future, now that the House settlement has been signed, TCU is as well positioned as any school in the Power Four to take a leadership stranglehold on their conference as anyone.
Nice.
People look at the Big 12 and say, well, Texas and Oklahoma have left. It's not the same league as it was. And I say, exactly right. It's not the same league that it was. It's a league that TCU should have a dominant position in. And to be clear, there's 4 or 5 other ADs in this league who are thinking and saying the same thing, as they should. But between our resources, the investment that the chancellors and Jeremiah helped put in place to be fully funded at the maximum revenue share dollars, and to have the facilities and the institution and the campus community and the Fort Worth community, very few people can match that.
Yes, sir. Is it easy to say that you bonded with Kirk Sarlos, a men's baseball coach, because of your background and his? And I don't know, did you guys ever overlap? I think his career ended about right when, or maybe it started right when you were ending, right around there. Is that fair?
We overlapped. He was in Houston when I was in Milwaukee. He's 10 years younger than I am. I spent 8 years in the minor leagues.
So you guys look so young anyway.
Thank you. Kirk spent like 8 days in the minor leagues. I spent 8 years in the minor leagues. So he caught up to me very quickly. What I like about Los is he's just very quietly confident. A lot of baseball coaches could be nervous having somebody with my background, in the role of athletic director, but he's one that you look at that just has a great charisma, and he's a great recruiter. And his kids, literally, we had 4 of the best freshman baseball players in the country, all of whom could have left, all of whom had higher dollar offers on the table, none of whom are leaving TCU, and that's a credit to Sarlos and his staff, and to the TCU community and faculty.
So great. Jamie Dixon, one of our beloved coaches, a good friend of the show. He had a sister, as you know, that coached at the Army, who passed away, unfortunately. Have you had a chance to get to know Jamie Dixon, and you know about the sister? Has that ever come across your plate?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, first conversed with Jamie when I was at West Point still. They were doing a documentary and needed the crew to get access to tell Maggie's story, and so I helped negotiate all of that. And so when I got the job, Jamie was one of the first people who reached out and wished me well. And he's the elder statesman. I mean, Jamie's done more at the highest level, whether at Pitt or here at TCU, and he's another guy that now that the world of crazy NIL is done, and everybody's going to have a similar pool of money to recruit young men, it's going to matter a lot is development, relationships, and Jamie Dixon is great at both of those. He's a heck of a coach, and coaching is going to start to matter again a lot more than it has these past couple of years.
Yes, sir. You mentioned Mark Campbell. He was your first contract extension, I think, since you arrived. Congrats on that, by the way. Wonderful move from all of us fans, but that was fantastic. We all celebrated that around here because of what he just put through. But you got to be part of an Elite Eight women's basketball team, something this city's never seen before. Had to be amazing.
Yeah, to sit with trustees in Birmingham at the Elite Eight and have them say, I've never been to a women's basketball game until this year. To be in that arena when we beat Louisville with not a seat to sit in, as loud as at any basketball game that I've been to, men or women's, what Coach Campbell and that team was able to do with heart and tenacity and talent was really fun. And he's reloaded, and he's locked. And yeah, this funky town caught the women's basketball fever.
Yes, sir.
And we're uniquely positioned because, as we saw this year, if you earn a national seed, you get to host the first 2 rounds, and then the next 2 rounds we had to go to Birmingham. Well, the Birmingham rounds next year are at Dickies Arena. So in theory, we could have 4 games played here in Fort Worth. And
Oh, wow.
this town and community got behind those young women. We're anticipating another fun season.
Yes, indeed. You mentioned a second ago the NCAA settlement. Can you walk us through that a little bit? You don't have to go long, but the short of it.
Yeah, essentially the House settlement was officially finally signed by a judge in California, and essentially it will now allow us as a community, the NCAA and the member institutions, to pay $2.8 million in $2.8 billion in back damages to former student athletes whose name, image, and likeness they were not able to take advantage of. Sorry, JW, it's 2016 and on, so you and we're out of luck, unfortunately. So there will be a back damages portion of that payment that we are all participating in. All Division I institutions will be paying that off over the next 10 years. And then the forward-looking piece of the settlement allows institutions like TCU to share revenue with its student athletes. And so the cap in year one is $20.5 million. It'll escalate by 4% every year. And so it is up to each individual institution to determine how they want to use their $20.5 million. Use it all on one sport, use it all on 5 sports, divvy it up over their entire offerings. It's completely up to the institution. And so that's the new wilderness. The last piece is name, image, and likeness is now truly going to be used how it was intended, which is any student athlete who is marketable and a corporation or company or a business wants that person to represent them and use their name, image, and likeness to do so, they can do it. But there's now some checks and balances. Deloitte will be the company of record that all deals have to go to Deloitte, and they say, hey, you can't pay somebody $2 million for filming a TikTok video. There will be a fair range of compensation is how it's being termed. So no more, here's $1 million, come play center for us. It'll now be legitimized.
Legitimized in that there'll be a contract in place of some paperwork that it holds the athlete to a certain standard, more or less.
Yes, and continuity across the country. So whether you're in Columbus, Ohio, Austin, Texas, Eugene, Oregon, or Fort Worth, Texas, if you are working for a car wash company and you're doing 10 TikTok videos, 3 tweets, and filming 2 public service announcements, it can't be worth $10,000 in one place and $500,000 in the other place. So there will be a standardized kind of a la carte rate card that says this is what that type of endorsement goes for.
So there's a cap on how much Joe's Car Wash can pay an athlete. He can't give him $10 million. It has to be. Do you know the cap yet? Is that?
Well, it'll be different for each institution. Okay. But what we know is if Rob Gronkowski is getting $250,000 to do a national commercial for an insurance agency, there's not a college kid in the country who's going to be getting $5 million for it.
Fair. You mentioned $20.5 million is your budget for the athletes. Is it easy to, or is it simple to say that the money sports, the revenue sports, football, basketball, baseball will steer the ship in that regard?
Yeah, that's certainly how we're approaching it, and that is pretty consistent across all Power 4 institutions. Anybody, a ticketed sport, any sport that is creating revenue is where most of the revenue dollars are going to be.
What are we supposed to assume or know what will happen with the non-revenue sports?
Well, the good news is the non-revenue sports at a place like TCU are going to not skip a beat. They're going to continue to have the scholarships, which is worth $85,000 a year at TCU. And the playing field will be level in that all the other schools in the country are having the same thing, making the same decisions. So ours will continue to be in a really positive place.
Will any sports go away in the near future that you can tell us?
No,
everything will remain as
nationally. I have concerns. I have concerns for wrestling. I have concerns for some of the men's Olympic sports, men's tennis, men's cross country, men's golf. But TCU is fully committed to the student athlete experience at the top level, and we've got too good of facilities, too good of coaches, and it's too important to the institution to let that go away.
Yes, sir. NIL, is it still going to be called NIL? Is it changed names?
It is. So the Flying T Collective is folding up shop. They did a phenomenal job for 3 years, raising about $35 million over 3 years, which is just incredible to wrap your head around. But NIL, since it is now an institutional obligation, the collective really is not necessary in its current state. So John Denton and his great staff have kind of they've written the last check and signed the last contract, and huge debt of gratitude to that group for what they've done. But we'll now have a athletic department unit. So we've got our development, we've got marketing. We'll now have NIL that we'll do in partnership with Learfield, who's going to provide some staffing and talent, and not to have any redundancies. We're going to complement that with some positions of our own.
Fair enough. Everybody knows in the frog world the story, or generally the story of Josh Hoover, how Notre Dame reached out and tried to take him away with the gift of money. We had to come up and save this, and glad we did. Is that problem going to be more prevalent in the future? Is there some kind of regulations now where schools can't poach other people's players as easily as they once did?
Well, now that the House settlement is signed, you can't just have a pool of money, and I think it was Tennessee that was rumored to have come after them. And by the way, I would have come after him too. He's a phenomenal athlete and a phenomenal young man. And again, a credit to TCU, where a 7-figure increase in compensation just didn't seem that attractive to someone who knows the value that he has here, a love for his teammates, a trust in his coach. And so, and what we've already seen, there's already a case involving Wisconsin and Miami, which is the first poaching case where you're never supposed to talk to another institution's athlete. It happens every day. And coaches have complained about it for years, but they've been really hesitant to actually turn somebody in. And so it is now, there's been somebody turned in, and I think it's a good decision. I think it should be turned in. And so there's a new world of enforcement in every way, shape, and form in college athletics, and I think it's a good thing for us.
Very nice. We'll be right back with State of the Frogs with your Athletic Retro Mike Buddie.
Welcome to the Squire Shop. We are locally owned and operated since 1994. We specialize in the finest men's clothing that the market has to offer at affordable prices with unbelievable service. We do custom clothing all the way to more casual, Peter Millar, Johnny O, kind of everything. Well, my dad's the owner, so I've been around retail my whole life. Oh, it's great. I mean, it's the best boss I'll ever have. I know that. We love our TCU community. They have been so good to us. Come see us today. Go Frogs!
Welcome back to State of the Frogs with your Athletic Retro Mike Buddie. Mike, priorities for you at this point. You've outlaid a lot of things you're doing. What are your major priorities for this university?
Well, honestly, my first priority is making sure that we're contributing to the mission of TCU. Chancellor Poland's got a fantastic strategic plan. He trusts in us enough to make athletics one of the 4 pillars to his strategic plan. So I think, first and foremost on my mind is making sure that I'm over communicating with him early in my tenure. In-house, we have a couple positions that we're looking to fill right now to build out my team, which is going to be a huge opportunity. And then come July 1, we are going to be processing payroll with the first group of that $20.5 million. I think we've got $512,000 of payroll that's going to be going out in July, which is just counterintuitive to everything that you and I have ever known and believed about college athletics. To be saying the word payroll, it sounds odd, but now we are built like a business, just like you've built here, where these young men and women are expecting a paycheck to hit their inbox of their bank accounts. And so we've got to get that right. We have to do it right the first time. There's been a couple instances of student athletes being offered deals and cash that never came to fruition, and that crushes the recruiting efforts of those institutions. And so we've got to make sure that our back of house, it sounds goofy, but these 18, 19-year-old kids, they don't know what paying taxes really is. And so we've got to shepherd them through this process and allow them to continue to focus on the main thing, which is their education, and then allow them to continue to play the sports that they love in this new landscape. And so that's first and foremost on our minds.
That's a great point you bring up. Are these student athletes going to be required to take some financial classes so they understand what actually is going on in the tax situation you mentioned?
Well, we can't require them to do it, but we have made it available, and our good friends at the Neely School are well-versed and great at helping teach financial literacy, and so they're great partners to collaborate with throughout this. But, it's a new day and age, but at the end of the day, we're still doing what we do, and that's competing to win championships. And, August is going to be here before we know it, and I can't wait for it to get here.
Absolutely. Can you tell us how do you put value on athletes in sports? Is it a sliding scale? Like I assume a football player will make more than most others, and just generally, is there a way that us fans can know how a student might be paid versus maybe a lesser sport? athlete?
Yeah, and there will be some transparency to the new process in that the national group with NIL Go they'll be compiling information, and so it'll be anonymous in that you can only see it by like league, but you can look up the Big 12 and say left tackles in the Big 12 average $745,000 a year, or whatever the number is. You can do it by position. And so there will be some transparency, which has not existed, right? When you're recruiting a young man right now, they might say, I've got a $1.4 million offer on the table. And there's no way to know that's true, because you can call that other school and they're not going to tell you the truth, or just not tell you anything. And so it is a new day and age. Ryan Dorchester, who is one of Sonny Dykes' right-hand trusted advisors, has NFL experience. He's basically our cap expert. Each sport is different. Men's basketball was kind of off the rails this summer in terms of the amount of dollars that any talented basketball player was able to command on the open market. Each sport is a little bit different, but yeah, football and men's basketball are the two driving forces.
Yes, sir. And I assume your job will still entail quite a bit of money raising, or at least selling the university to the outside world, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, that'll never go away, right? We still have to feed and clothe and buy airplane tickets and bus fare, and that's never going to go away, and those prices continue to rise. And so the fundraising efforts of the Frog Club will continue to be a main focus.
Is there any part of our athletic department, team-wise, that needs improvement in your eyes? Where do you think we need to lift up this university as far as sports is concerned?
Well, I think David Roditi and Hector Gutierrez have shown us that you can be nationally relevant just by working really hard and finding that perfect recruiting niche and being able to sell TCU in the way that they've done. And we have a lot of teams that are knocking on the door. From a facilities standpoint, there's a part of the master plan that the chancellor's put together. There is a facilities master plan, and there's some athletics components to it. Certainly, the all sexy parking deck, right? Everybody loves to give money to a parking deck, but we need parking. Lupton Stadium is getting old. It's a fantastic fan-friendly ballpark, but there's not a lot of high-end amenities. And what we know about TCU fans is they'll pay for a high-end amenity. And so there's a plan to modernize Lupton Stadium a little bit. The indoor tennis center probably has outlived its useful lifespan, and so how do we keep our tennis programs competitive and give them 6 indoor courts, and then finally there's a basketball practice facility. Right now we have 1 basketball court, and then the Schollmeyer competition floor, and they share that with volleyball, and so that's another thing that we'll be looking at in the future.
And the favorite question we get around here is the football. Your first football season is almost upon us. It's July is about to be here. What are your expectations for football season, and how has your relationship been with Coach Dykes?
Coach Dykes is frighteningly calm. I've never been around a football coach that is as competent and confident in his abilities and his staff that he's put around him. I keep waiting for him to be in a little bit of a panic, but he's been at every level. He was raised by a legendary coach. And I love his calm demeanor, and his players feed off of that, right? I love that teams that don't panic tend to play well under pressure. And so, expectations for the season, I think we go into every game with an expectation that it's a winnable game. And I think, getting a chance to play on national TV, the only game on Monday night of Labor Day against a Bill Belichick coach team is a huge opportunity to start the season with some confidence. And so we'll learn a lot that first night about how this season's going to go. I think the schedule's front-loaded with SMU and Arizona State and North Carolina. But if we get off to a good start and we're crisp coming out of the gate, and you get a little confidence, as the ball starts rolling and magical things can happen.
Yes, sir. So you mentioned SMU. This will be the last year, at least for a little while, that we play SMU. Do you have any thoughts on that coming back in the future?
Yeah, you're the first person that's asked me that question. I've kind of kept my mouth shut and tried to listen and learn. It's an interesting stance in that a lot of people don't consider that a rivalry at all. Other people consider it a prime rivalry. And so we will make our decisions on football scheduling to put us in the best possible position to be in the college football playoff. And so as we examine that in conjunction with Coach Dykes and certainly Chancellor Pullen, if SMU, it makes sense for us to have a like-minded Power 4 opponent that can help our strength of schedule, that's going to be considered a winnable game, then we're all for it. They've got a new leader down the road in Dallas as well. And so early stages right now, we're scheduled, 4 or 5 years out into the future already right now. There's talk about, are we going to continue to have a 9-game schedule? Are all the Power 5s going to go to a 9-game schedule, or is it going to be 8 for some and 9 for others? And so all those things go into the thought behind that.
Sure. Are you of the mindset, Mike, that our football program, should play more lesser, smaller universities up front in schedule to get the wins, or would you rather us play bigger games like in North Carolina to get more exposure? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think where the trend is taking us is you've got to play a really highly competitive schedule. I do think playing an FCS level team makes sense for a lot of reasons. One is if you can get that from a school in state, having led the Furman institution that I did, those paydays are really important to FCS level competition, and it gives your team a really good opportunity to ease into the season early on, get some young kids some playing time. And so I like having one of those games, but I think the other 2 non-conference games need to be pretty meaningful.
I had a chance to take Jay, our producer here, over to the new facilities. It's not quite finished, but it's getting really close. It looks really nice. Are you proud of what's been going on over there and have more plans for that as well?
Well, I'm absolutely proud of it. And again, the credit goes to Jeremiah for getting it done. I get to come here and cut the ribbon on it. But, he helped raise the money from so many families, the Harrisons, the Simpsons, the Cunninghams, just great donors that helped make that project a reality. But it's a game changer. Again, recruiting is it's a battle of inches. And so to have a facility that is truly committed to getting you bigger, stronger, faster, and healthier, quicker, those things all matter, and that resonates with parents and student athletes. And so we're really excited to cut the ribbon and open that up to our young men and women.
Very nice. There's a few legendary folks that live around these parts. I don't know if you've had a chance to meet any of them. A couple of them go by the initials like LT, or maybe Max Duncan's not initials, but folks like that. And there's some legends in the basketball world, the Desmond Baines. In fact, we had a guy win a world title last night for the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah.
Have you had a chance to meet any of the old guard, if you will?
I have. LT certainly on the board of trustees, a phenomenal representative. Won me 4 consecutive fantasy football championships, and I let him know that. Des Bain has been, a fixture. We retired his jersey. Been wonderful. Not had a chance to meet any of the other Andy Dalton or Max. Matt Carpenter and some of our other, Major League Baseball players, the Huffmans and, some phenomenal athletes, 2-sport athletes, both of the Huffmans. So, yeah, slowly making my way around, getting a chance to meet some of these legends of TCU. Coach Patterson, I've gotten to spend a little bit of time with him. And
thoughts on Gary, if you don't mind?
Well, certainly, but one of the biggest reasons that TCU was put on the national stage. I think everybody in the country outside of Ann Arbor, Michigan, became a TCU fan in 2022, and that's a huge credit to Coach Patterson. And I know he's not our football coach anymore, but he's a resident of Fort Worth, and it's clear that he cares about this institution and wants the best for TCU football. And so it's been great to spend a little bit of time with him, and I'm excited to meet some of those other big names. That's kind of. This is my big leagues in this industry, right? I got to get to know some great athletes at Furman, but they weren't national caliber LaDainian Tomlinsons. And again, a great time at Army, but this is why you become an athletic director, to get the opportunity to do it at this level.
I think a lot of people that watch this will appreciate your thoughts on Coach Patterson. He's a beloved guy, and yes, we feel the same way. So thank you for sharing that. Women's sports at TCU, thoughts there?
Yeah, goldmine. I mean, if you look at some of the highest earning legitimate NIL people across the country, 8 out of every 10 are female. They have social media followings. They have social media savvy. I think they understand brand development better than young men at that stage in their lives. TCU has 64% of our undergraduate are female. There is something clicks when young women come to TCU and they see the dorms and they see the Greek life and they meet some faculty members. And then the ones that are Division I athletes see our facilities, and it all makes sense. And so, our volleyball, upward trend, soccer, upward trend, beach volleyball, national champions, cross country, track, tennis, they can just continue to exceed. Rifle, national champions. And so, equestrian, which is a sport that I've never had at any of my previous institutions, had so much fun getting to see us host the Big 12 championships. And so I think there's a great fit here for young women who want to push themselves athletically, but also want a great education and to have a great experience over 4 years. I think all of that aligns really well.
Yes, sir. We're hoping to get you out to the equestrian center and get you on a horse at some point and get you on camera.
Yeah, not going to happen.
Shout out to Coach Bell, the women's soccer team. He's done a wonderful job with the women's soccer team, so I'm glad you said that as well. Appreciate that. There was a little story that we've heard not too long ago that you were seen at the Fort Worth Rodeo, one of the Fort Worth institutions. What was your thoughts on your first rodeo here in town?
Well, it was great. And I'd been to the rodeo one time in North Carolina, but it's a different level here. It's part, Oscar red carpet, part, athletics event. I wore my dude shoes because I didn't have cowboy boots yet. I was hoping somebody would notice and say, hey, I'm going to get you a pair of boots.
They did notice, by the way.
Oh, yeah,
yes.
I'm sure. But yeah, actually, it's part of our culture. I loved it. I mean, it's an event. And I was able to host several of our coaches and a few donors. And it was interesting because, in my role and, spent a lot of time with Chancellor Buschini at the time. And he said, I get invited to this thing every night and it becomes a wear and tear. But I asked the coaches, how many of these have you been to? And they said, never. This is great. And they were so excited. And so, you get spoiled in our role that you get to get invited to so many of these great cultural events. And I view the rodeo as part of the culture of Fort Worth.
And you might have been seen out the Colonial Pro-Am playing golf. Not saying you're good or bad. Are you a golfing type?
I love playing golf. I play twice a year. And so I like to tell people I hit for the cycle that day at Colonial. I hit a ball off the clubhouse window. I hit one off of a scoreboard and I hit one off of a tent, but had a great day and what a great event. And, Colonial and us are continuing to evolve our partnership, and they're going to be so great for our golf programs to have this new facility out there in conjunction with a phenomenal brand like Colonial.
Yes, indeed. Any other hobbies you want to talk to us about today?
I don't really have time for hobbies. My daughter is a theater kid at Cornell University, and she's got me into musical theater. Love it. Looking forward to taking advantage of not only the I almost said the Peace Center, the Bass Center for Performing Arts, right. And so lots of culture here that we're going to get a chance to love live music. I used to like to read, but I haven't found much time to do it. So I try to unwind and just sit by the pool.
You have a favorite book, by the way, since you used to like to read?
Well, every John Grisham, every James Patterson, and all the Reacher books were high on my list.
And speaking of music, you have a son that's I've listened to some of his work. I'm kind of impressed with this guy. What can you tell us about this guy?
Yeah, well, he just had his first live gig just the other day in Beacon, New York. But yeah, he took to playing music like I took to throwing baseballs. It just was a natural fit. But yeah, he taught himself drums and keyboards, and plays guitar and bass. And so he's got multiple music projects. But Weeping Angel is the band that just had his first gig up in Beacon, New York. Really proud of him.
Everybody that knows of you and read about you knows you're just going 100 miles an hour. What is your daily schedule like? And we'll let you go here in a second, but you got better things to do. But what does a day in the life of Mike Buddie look like?
Well, I get to the office between 8 and 8:30. Monica Flynn, who is my right hand and was the right hand of 5 predecessors of mine, starting with Danny Morrison, I think, just invaluable, controls my calendar, is a great front door for the athletics department. But really, there's no normal day, and that's part of what I love about my business is, it might be meetings with you and the folks at Frogs Today. It might be meeting with a recruit, might be renegotiating a coach's contract. I was in Portland, Oregon 3 days ago with our friends at Nike and 7 other athletic directors, having conversations on the future of college athletics. And so the one thing that I do try to make sure is by 5:30 I'm out of the office, and I stress that to my team. Your day's over at 5 o'clock. There's no reason for you to still be here at 6. burnout is so real in our business. I just think that you can always come up with a reason to stay in the office longer, but I force us to find a ways to get out of the office and get home, and I think that's important in the long run.
Love to hear that. I know you got a really good buddy, or at least a new friend at Nike with Elliott Hill and a former Frog, which is super duper to have. So I appreciate you mentioning that. I know that'll be helpful to you as well. So, Mr. Mike Buddie, we appreciate you being here, man. That's a lot. You've shared a lot with us. Thank you for the time. We're grateful to have you here. We're very excited for the future. And God, you've been 6 months and you've already got a couple of natties on your mantle. So congratulations.
Let's hope the first of many. Appreciate what you guys do here, and
Yes,
thanks
sir.
for having me.
You're very welcome. That's been another State of the Frog with the new, not so new athletic director, Mike Buddie. Until next time, thank you.
Roxo Media House.